Imagine a habit so powerful it feels like you're rewiring your brain. A compulsion that promises relief, but leaves you feeling more isolated than ever before. For millions, this isn't their imagination, it's the daily reality of porn addiction. But here's the thing, you're not alone. We actually published a blog on this a while back, and the data shows it's our most popular blog to date.
Yeah, porn addiction is definitely a serious issue that untold numbers of people struggle with. And there's a lot to unpack in this article, so that's what we're going to be doing today, because porn addiction is just one of those topics that people tend to oversimplify, but there's just much more to it.
Totally. So let's get right into it. We're Deb and Clint with Sandstone Care, and today we're talking signs of porn addiction, causes of it, how it affects mental health, the whole 9 yards. And I think one of the most interesting things about it is that it's not even like an officially recognized thing.
It's true. You'd think that with all the talk about it, it'd be right there in the DSM-5, that big book on mental health disorders, but it's just not.
So that's kind of weird, right? It's like, what's up with that?
Well, it comes down to how we define addiction. The DSM-5 recognizes that some process addictions as mental health disorders, but there isn't enough research on porn addiction for it to be officially classified yet.
Right.
So an addiction like this isn't really about the content itself, but it's more about the behavior, or really the loss of control.
Okay, so someone could enjoy watching porn sometimes, and that's not actually a problem. It's when it starts to control their life that it becomes a bigger deal.
Exactly. Think of it like, food.
Right.
Someone might love donuts, have one every now and then, no biggie, but then they're sneaking donuts at 3 a.m. or they're hiding them from the family or their health is suffering, then it's an issue. Same with porn.
So it's about the impact it has on your life, not just what you're watching. Is it messing up your relationships, your work, even just how you feel about yourself?
100%. It's about whether this is causing harm. Is this taking over and making you feel powerless to stop? That's a red flag.
Okay, so that makes sense. And doesn't that usually involve dopamine and stuff?
You're on the right track. Dopamine is definitely a key player here.
Okay, so for people who don't know, what is dopamine exactly and why should we care about it?
Yeah, so dopamine is your brain's reward system. The feeling of satisfaction that you get when you achieve something or eat something tasty or, engage in pleasurable activities. That's dopamine doing its thing.
And porn can trigger that too, right?
It sure can. It's just like drugs, gambling, even social media. Porn can trigger these dopamine surges, making your brain crave more. And over time, you might need more and more just to get the same feeling.
So it's like your brain gets used to it and you just build up a tolerance just like with other stuff.
Precisely. It's this whole cycle of seeking out that reward, getting that dopamine hit, and then needing more and more the next time. It can be a slippery slope.
And that's where things can get really intense, right? Because it's not just about the dopamine anymore. It starts messing with your mind, your emotions, the whole deal.
You hit the nail on the head. That's where we get into the real meat of this issue, the psychological and emotional impact, which can be pretty significant.
And it's not like people don't feel that, right? It's you try to tell yourself it's no big deal, but somewhere deep down, it's messing with your head.
It definitely goes deeper than just, I watch too much. It really does impact mental health in ways that researchers are just now starting to really understand.
Yeah, I was rereading our blog article on this and doing even more digging on the topic in general. Some research was saying that people who are struggling with this are way more likely to have serious anxiety.
Much more likely, yeah.
And it's not even just anxiety, right? That's one piece of the puzzle.
Sadly, yeah. We think depression's linked to this too. Social anxiety, problems focusing, even obsessive compulsive tendencies in some cases. It can really spiral.
No wonder people have trouble in relationships because of this. I mean, come on, if you're constantly chasing that dopamine high from porn, real life's probably gonna seem pretty dull after a while.
It messes with your expectations is the thing. Suddenly, regular intimacy, the kind that takes time and emotional connection to build, just pales in comparison, Plus, there's the secrecy factor. Sneaking around, hiding things, that's never good for a relationship.
It's like they're living a double life.
Oh, absolutely. And that shame on top of everything else just makes it 10 times harder to admit that you need help. It becomes a vicious cycle.
So we've got the mental health stuff, the relationship strain, but what about physically? There were a few articles mentioning erectile dysfunction. Is that like a thing?
Unfortunately, yeah, it's kind of ironic, right? A lot of times guys get into porn thinking it'll make them better at sex, but it can backfire big time.
Because your brain's used to the super stimulation of porn, and then real sex just can't compete.
Bingo. That's like a big part of it. And it can even mess with your hormones like testosterone production, though the research is still, ongoing.
This is heavy stuff we're talking about. I feel like someone listening might just be feeling overwhelmed by all of this. So we got to talk about the good news too, right? What can people actually do about it?
Because there is hope. Yeah.
There absolutely is. The first thing to remember is that you are not alone. And second, this isn't a life sentence or anything. It's a challenge, sure, but people overcome this all the time. There are therapists who specialize in this, support groups, even apps now to help people get a handle on it.
I bet there are people listening right now who are like, okay, this is me. What do I do exactly? Where do I even start?
Just realizing it's a problem is huge. Seriously, that's a great first step. So good for you if you realize that. As for what to do, a lot of times therapy can be really helpful. Have you heard of CBT?
Cognitive behavioral therapy. Yeah, it's like the gold standard kind of thing. Basically, it helps you retrain your brain, right? So it can help you figure out triggers and then when you turn to porn and then come up with healthier ways to deal with these situations.
So if you always turn to porn when you're stressed, CBT gives you other tools to handle the stress instead of going down that same road each time.
If there's low self-esteem or maybe something from your past that's just making things worse.
Because it's usually more than just the porn itself, right? There's other stuff going on there.
Right. So therapy helps you work through all that. And this is important, there's also a whole community aspect to this. You don't have to do this alone.
Support groups, yeah?
Exactly. Just knowing that there are other people out there who totally get it, who've been there, it makes a huge difference. You can share your story, you can get encouragement, hold each other up, hold each other accountable. That's where the real magic happens.
So as we're wrapping up here, what's the main thing you hope people take away from all of this?
If you're struggling with this, please hear this. You're not alone. I know we've said it 1,000 times, but for real, you're not alone. It's way more common than people think, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. And the most important thing is that there's also hope, right? Recovery is possible. It might not be easy, but it's totally doable. With the right support, you can build a way healthier, happier life.
I love that. And hey, even if this isn't you personally, you probably know someone who, might be dealing with this. And just being able to listen without judging can be huge.
Absolutely. Sometimes just knowing someone understands and cares can make all the difference.
Totally agree. Now, if anyone out there is man, I gotta learn some more about this whole addiction thing, what's something they could look into?
Oh, the science of addiction is fascinating. We talked about dopamine, there's so much more to it, how your brain gets wired, how habits form, how you can actually rewire your thinking. It's amazing what the brain can do. So if you're interested about learning more about porn addiction specifically, then definitely go check out Sandstone Care's blog on the subject. And while you're there, you can find a bunch of other blogs on things like addiction and mental health.
That's a good thought to end on. Well, thanks for unpacking this with me. It's been really eye-opening.
You too. Until next time, everybody, keep learning, keep asking questions, and remember, there's always more to discover.